Good morning and welcome to the Cauldron of Curiosities. I've been thinking about the format of the podcast again, and I realised that despite the fact that I've spent the majority of my life working in a job where I had to turn up at work on time, I actually thought to myself this morning, how did I keep that up? Because part of me struggles with routine. I get bored with the routine of having to be somewhere at the same time. And I can find myself making excuses not to do the same thing over and over again. But then I also am aware of the benefits of doing certain things as part of my routine, the ritual of my day. And one of those things is using the tuning forks. And I thought I would share with you, first of all, my routine, and then we'd discuss the podcast format and why I've got this inclination to change. And is it because of a change of the seasons? So this is what I'm pondering this morning. Rather than writing it into my journal, which I have gone off the boil with a journal a little bit at the moment, which is not good, but I'm quite sure winter will bring that back in a little bit easier. So when I get up in the morning, the first thing that I do, because I'm living in my van and about to move on to my boat, is take Bumble outside. So he can have a leg stretch, he has a drink and goes to the loo. And then I will light my candles. Now I light a candle which gives gratitude for a safe night's sleep, because living in a van, you do need to be grateful for that. Not having anyone interfering with your van while you've been sleeping. And my candle has a dedication to several different goddesses that I have worked with and that I choose to respect and honour. And I've got these beautiful goddess, they're like ceramic, and I bought them from Glastonbury Market. They're quite tiny, they're probably about 2 inches long, and they come in different colours. And they represent the different elements. So they're the colours of different earth, air, fire and water. And that does work for me in the morning. And I also have a candle that is specifically related to crossings, and that is when someone dies, or maybe an animal dies, has been hit by a car, anything that involves them, an incident happening which is their end of their life on earth. I will light my crossing candle and ask for them to have a safe crossing, and may the light shine strongly on the other side. Because lighting a candle in this world, with the concept that you're sending your intention for that particular animal or person, is that light will shine on the other side and they'll be able to see it, that it will help with their crossing. And I discovered that this blessing of crossing was used by the Romanis in the past, which I think is a beautiful thing to do. And I've been doing this now for many years. So those are the two things that I do. I don't do the crossing candle if I haven't been out travelling or nothing has actually happened to man or beast. So that tends to last a little bit longer. And then I make my coffee and I sit down and I do my tuning forks. So every day I use 3 tuning forks, which are called the Clear, Cleanse and Balance. And they actually come from a company called suarasound.com. And Debbie Walker, who runs the company, runs sound practitioner courses. And I did the sound practitioner course with her. And you learn using the solfeggio frequencies. And that can be a blend of harmonies and vibrations and interlinking with your intuition. And you can use those frequencies to help people both mentally and physically. And it's quite interesting because we had to do case studies and they were quite rigorous, the amount of hours that we did with them, so that we could learn how we could get the best out of using sound to help other people. And I really enjoyed doing those. So that's the first part of my day. And I do like to have 2 cups of coffee. Sort of gets my system into the balance with, I'm seeing the light, the sun's coming up, although this morning it's a little bit hidden by the clouds. And we did actually go for a little wander in the corner of the field and noticed there were a lot of dead wood up there. So I thought, actually, I could go and collect some of that, couldn't I? Ready for the winter fire and for kindling. How many of you go out and collect your own kindling anymore? If you think about it, back in the day when we all would have gone off looking for kindling because we wouldn't have been buying it from the local shop, would we? That is how people were discovering things and foraging, weren't they? They would have seen what was growing as they were picking up the dead wood that had dropped from the trees. We wouldn't be going and getting fresh pine chopped up. You think there's been a whole industry replacing things that are available for free if you should just so wish to go out and get it yourself. And are we really too busy to be able to go and gather kindling ourselves? Now, I'm sure there are people in the world who do gather kindling themselves on a regular basis. We've just had a drought, so that means the kindling is going to be super dry. And that means it will be perfect for gathering. And I'm sure there's probably some logs out there that could be gathered and sawn up or chopped up, ready for the fire in the winter. I remember one year there was a particularly strong storm that came through in Cornwall, and I was living in southeast Cornwall at the time, and we went down the lane and there were branches everywhere, and I had a wheelbarrow, so I went down the lane with a wheelbarrow and I gathered all the broken tree branches and then laid them out in the shed in the place that we were renting so that it all dried out. And I did saw it all up and I used it that winter. And it was fine. I had no problems with my chimney either. Although we get told that we have to use kiln dry, don't we? Now, the reason we get told that we have to use kiln dried is because they don't want us burning wet wood. But wood that's out there now, it's been drying for several months in a considerable heat, possibly not as hot as a kiln, but I don't know how hot kiln dried wood goes to. But have a think about it. Is it going to be wet? Probably not. Maybe risk it. Go out and have a walk and gather your own kindling and wood. So this is quite annoying, isn't it? Somebody's car alarm is going off. And this is early in the morning because I've just finished my forks. And what is it about car alarms? Because nobody actually comes to look when a car alarm goes off, do they? Because the amount of times they go off in car parks and they get completely ignored. Like this one here. It's the third time it's gone off this morning and no one's coming. And it's makes me think about all the security devices that we are encouraged to use. It's like if you have an accident in your car, the police ask for your dash cam footage, and if you can't provide dash cam footage, and I had this experience myself, I was involved in a head-on collision. I was driving quite slowly up the hill from the place that I was living in, and this guy came racing down the hill in his car. I slammed the brakes on and he just hit me head on. Now, what I should have done was just stayed where I was and blocked the road until the police had come and measured his skid marks, because they were quite significant. Thank God that noise stopped. There's a friend of mine, or an acquaintance, someone I met, and she said that when a car alarm suddenly went off, especially when you were talking about spiritual matters or a really loud noise, it could be like a confirmation from the universe saying, yeah, you're right, big backup, yeah, we agree with you. Or is it something trying to distract you and stop you from doing what you were trying to do? Anyway, I took a little break and I went and gathered some sticks, and the wood is quite dry, so I was able to break the branches up, the dead branches, and gather a few more. And there was a spot in the wood that I was able to create a bit of a platform with the branches so they can continue staying dry, so they don't get wet on the ground. And let's see if that works. So I've put a few there. I'm going to go back later, put some more. It's actually getting quite warm, so oh no. Yeah, I thought it's probably best to go back up there when it's a little bit cooler, but there's not much of a breeze. And I think Bumble's going to bark because he has a thing about anybody but walking past a van, which it's just another irritating thing, all these noises. And then I went back to thinking what I was going to say to you. So this incident with the guy head-on collision, well, the police said they wouldn't do anything because I didn't have dash cam footage, despite the fact there were skid marks coming down the hill. You could see them on the road, and where he went up, you know, this was a seriously deep set of marks where he did try to avoid me, but the lane was too narrow, and they wouldn't do anything, did nothing. And what annoyed me was, I was going probably about 20 to 30 miles per hour because I'd literally just pulled out of the lane, so I hadn't even built up any speed. I was going uphill. He completely smashed the front of my car, and there was water pouring down the road because it broke the radiator, and I got whiplash. It was a nightmare, and I'm sure some of you out there have experienced it. But it's a very fact that you have to rely on the digital world all the time. Nobody believes you unless you've got video footage. Thinking, really? Because actually, we all now know, if we go on social media, that videos can be tampered with. They're not real. Somebody can come along and do whatever they want. You've only got to go on CapCut and it can make it look like you can fly. So why is video footage so important? Because I don't think it is. And it's like people who've got those doorbell, the Ring doorbells, and then they've got multiple cameras. I went up to a gate in a beautiful village. I can't see that it had a huge crime rate, but maybe it did. They had 3 cameras on the front of their property. So what does that say to you if somebody's got 3 cameras on the front of their property? 1, they don't trust the people they live near. Their neighbourhood watch doesn't work. or they've got something worth stealing. That's often the thing, isn't it? Although I remember speaking to a solicitor and she was saying she had been talking to a criminal who regularly stole from vehicles and stole vehicles as well, and asked what was the criteria, what made him steal them. And one of the things he mentioned was if it was owned by a man, this is where the stereotyping came in, it was more likely to have high-tech stuff. So there'd be the toys, for playing games, the access to the internet. And you would think, oh, how would they know that? Well, you've only got to go on to Facebook and any of the van groups and search for conversations around people talking about the equipment they have. And they are very open because they'll be boasting about the wonderful stuff they've got on board, whether they've got a integral audio system, or if they've got a particular type, say a Bluetti or Jackery, whatever things they've got, and they'll be talking about the size of it and the batteries they've got. Oh yeah, I've got a lithium setup that's got this, and I've got these panels. And you wonder if there are people surfing those groups looking and thinking, I'm going to come along and do a little bit of shopping, technology shopping. Well, we've heard, haven't we, in the past where people will steal to order, and they steal tractors and other pieces. And there's even been some incidences where narrowboats have been taken. And given that narrowboats only go at 4 miles an hour, it's quite difficult for them to get away from you, if you're chasing after them. But it might be that the people have been watching the narrowboat and noticed that it's maybe not a livable narrowboat, and that the person doesn't come there every week, and they may even set up their own system for watching that sort of thing, and they just go down and chocks away. It ain't chocks away. Undo the mooring ropes and off you go. Although I have heard it of people who moor in one area of the UK, they padlock their mooring chains so that somebody can't come along and take their boat. It just makes... So how far do we have to go with our security? Do we have to be having 12-foot walls with guard dogs? Or can we maybe not have so much stuff and not have to lock our doors? What do you think? Just a thought. So here today, just going to give you a quick weather piece. It is grey. I'm English. Well, not English, I'm Cornish. The trees, the leaves are curling, they're dropping far too early. The ground's covered in some places with leaves. And it's grey, it's close. There's a tiny breeze, which is slightly moving the birch leaves. But, it's got that horrible closeness to it. And it's 9 o'clock. So it doesn't bode well for how the rest of the day might feel if it's going to be too warm. Now, one of the subjects that I had offered to talk about was about the Canal and River Trust. So the Canal and River Trust took over from British Waterways. And what I don't understand is British Waterways maintain control of the canals in Scotland. And it's a government agency. But somebody in England decided that they would pass everything across to and make a charity called the Canal and River Trust. And as with many of these types of charities, there's a lot of people who get employed and get paid those chief executive wages. So a lot of the money that's coming into the charity is spent on the pay of the people who are managing it. And it's quite interesting when you have a look at some of the characters involved. Well, there's a political argument going on at the moment with the Canal and River Trust about their licensing. So they have a 2-tier licensing system. So you would think the license would be about using the canal, like going along on it, yeah? So access to the canal, you get a license. And as a side note on this, did you know that if you use your kayak or any sort of floating device on the canal, you are meant to have you're meant to pay for it, you're meant to have a license. You're not allowed to float on the canals or the rivers without paying. Well, when you think about it, the Environmental Agency is meant to be a representative of the people, isn't it? Taxpayers' money. So why are we paying to use the rivers? And why are we paying to use the canals? You would ask yourself that, if it's owned by the people. But somehow we've ended up, haven't we, in this convoluted mess, a big quango where people are making huge amounts of money out of it. And they've been selling assets off and then trying to reap the money back, which goes back to this 2-tier licensing. So the National Boats Travellers Association, National Bargee Travellers Association, MBTA, they are up in arms because they have to pay more, because they don't have a home mooring, because the Canal and River Trust says that if you have a home mooring, you pay less. Now, there are some people who have a home mooring who are out on the cut travelling on a regular basis. They're using the canal, they're using the locks, and weirdly, those who are doing shorter journeys are sometimes using the locks a lot more than those who are travelling as part of their lifestyle. Think about it logically. So they're nipping up to a winding hole. I did this with a friend the other day. We did 12 locks in one day. So that's a lot of use. And she has a home mooring, so she pays less than a person who may have been going in one direction that day and would only have used 6 locks. And yet CRT, the Canal and River Trust, says that the people who are called continuous cruisers are using the system more than the home moorers. Now, they don't have any proof of this. They've not actually done the research into the actual usage, because there's no evidence to say that continuous cruisers are using the facilities more. But one of the awful things that CRT has done is it's been closing down facilities. So one example is at Braunston, near Braunston Marina. There used to be a place where people could drop off their rubbish. Well, for some reason, CRT has closed it down. There's no refuse facility, so you can't drop off any rubbish. There is an Elton currently and a tap. Now, your licence that you pay for is meant to cover your ability to drop some rubbish off and to use the water in the Elson. But they've already taken away part of the facilitation. No rubbish. And I've heard there's a few other places, I believe, Hillmorton Locks. Again, they've closed the rubbish facility. Now, this has been closed for months, maybe longer. And you wonder what their game is. They say officially it's because they haven't got a contract with anyone to take the waste away, which I think is a load of bollocks, because if you asked one of the big waste contractors to come along and do a particular job, I'm sure they would. And how much organisation does it take to set up collection from those waste facilities? Because when they were originally set up, they would have been accessible, wouldn't they? It's not like you're dropping out of the middle of nowhere and saying, oh, I'm going to create a bin service at this point. Oh, but there's no road there, so the lorry can't get there. No, these are places that you historically would have been able to drop off your rubbish. Well, what I did notice is next to this place where they're saying no more waste, it appears there is some renovation work going on the stop house. What are the chances that the stop house has been sold off as an asset to somebody to have as a lovely canal side home? Because it's a rather large building. I will look into this, but this is a possibility, isn't it? That when people start asset stripping, which CRT is known to have been asset stripping across the canal and waterways, buildings and parcels of land, they've also lost their ability to generate money other than from their licence fees. They can't charge people to use the canal paths to walk on or cycle, although apparently in the past you had to pay to cycle along the canal path, but they don't charge for that anymore. And then there's been this campaign of using the canal paths for cyclists. Now I know, it's like the world's been taken over by the darn things, and there's cycle paths everywhere. You think about it. How many towns can you think of where there's been complete chaos because they've decided to build a cycle path? And then you'll be driving along, and where are the cyclists? In the road, not on the cycle path. So maybe these people who come up with these ideas about cycle paths should actually talk to the cyclist and say, do you want this facility? But I don't think this is how it happens. I think sometimes they have these meetings in these committees. Somebody has a good idea, but they don't put it out there and actually ask the people that are going to use the offering. But then if you think about it, it's a bit like some of the ideas that the government comes up with. It doesn't actually ask the people, does it? It sort of relies on the idea that it was in our manifesto, was it? Did you really tell us before we voted you in that you were going to do X, Y, and Z? I don't think so. I think you lied to us. So there's a lot of lying going on. And then there's probably somebody out there who gets offended by lies, saying, it's not lying, we're just a little bit, cautious with the truth. And that weaves right into that whole thing about misrepresentation. The amount of misrepresentation that I see on the internet, it drives me wild. It makes it really difficult. You can't use Google as a search engine anymore because it just gives you whatever whatever the advertisers want you to see. So if I put in right now that I was looking to buy, say, a wheelbarrow on Google right now, it would offer me Amazon, not the local country store down the road. It doesn't give us what we want or what we need. It's purely driven by money and by the advertisers, by the people paying, saying, I want to sponsor my product and you will push it. Which is why when you go into Google and you might say, like I did the other day, a 2 foot by 2 foot drawer. So, did I get anything that's 2 foot by 2 foot? Nothing. Zero. Wasn't even one. And I even put it in inverted commas to get it a little bit finer, tightened down. No, still nothing. It even sort of tried to send me towards Etsy, And obviously Etsy's paying to get some good hits on Google, and nothing. Yeah, there was zilch. Nothing of use to me when I was looking. And the levels of irritation start building, don't they, when you're trying to do something and the internet starts irritating you. And sometimes I'll just keep bashing away trying to fix it. And then I go, why have I done this? It's like I put in looking for a 4-inch wide plank of wood. No, it was not 4-inch wide. Unfortunately, I don't know. I honestly don't know why it can't give you what you're asking for. So it sort of said to me, you've got to go back to the old style. Go and look for it yourself. Stop being so lazy. Go to a store that might sell the thing that you're looking for. I suppose that's the thing. We have become really lazy, haven't we? And we've stopped going out and looking and going to the independent shops that should be stocking the thing. And then there's the other part where we want it now. So we're not willing to wait. We're not willing to go into the shop and say, I would like to have a 4-inch plank. Oh, we haven't got any in, but we can order some in. It'll be here next week. No, we want it now. We want that thing to be coming home with us because we've made the effort to drive there. So we're not willing to be flexible. We've lost that flexibility when it comes to shopping, and our capitalist edge has become really sharp when it doesn't actually need to be. Do we really need it? Maybe if we planned, wrote a list of the things that we think, actually, at the end of the month, I need to get a new saucepan. Go to the ironmongers. If you've still got an ironmongers where you are. Trouble is, because everybody keeps shopping on Amazon, we're losing all the shops. And people aren't going in. Robert Dias is still in a few towns, and that's quite a good place for going in and getting saucepans and things like that, and sort of household items. But I'm seeing the stores that were part of my childhood disappearing because people just aren't making the effort to walk there and go and buy the thing, or they're not willing to take the risk that we might not find it. It's bizarre, isn't it? How we have changed, and we're putting money into Jeff Bezos' pockets, and people are happy enough to moan about him not paying taxes. So why are you funding his tax-free existence? That's a good point, isn't it? Why are you doing that? It sort of feels like I'm having a bit of a moan today on the podcast. But I think what I'm trying to do is raise awareness through my own experience. And a final experience I was going to share with you. So I went to this amazing place in Whedon. It's called The Depot. And there's 2 antique shops, and they were seriously busy. There was a lot of people, and it's actually quite difficult to get a parking place. But it was a Saturday, so I guess I should have expected that. And above these 2 vintage antique places, there was a bookshop with a cafe, which I thought, perfect. I just love bookshops. I have a lot of books. And I went up, and this was 2 things that happened in there. So I was carrying stuff that I had bought at the vintage shop, and I placed it on the table and went to the counter to order my coffee. While I was at the counter waiting to order my coffee, a family who were in front of me went over to the table that I had picked out and moved all of my stuff. So I ordered my coffee, and I said to the girls, I said, I wasn't happy because those people over there have moved my stuff. So they went over and grabbed hold of it, and I went over because one of my baskets was on the floor by these people. They literally squished themselves in around my bits and pieces. I said, why did you touch my stuff? I said, I put that there because this is where I was planning on sitting. I said, I've only got 1 pair of hands. to go and get my coffee. And I can't do that with this stuff. So entitled. And they just all sat there like they were all had a sharp thing up their bums. That look you get off people where they're arseholes, and they know they're arseholes, but they're not going to even debate the fact that they're arseholes. And then I heard the girls behind the counter whispering loudly about the decaffeinated coffee I had ordered. And I went, wait a minute. And they served me instant coffee, instant decaf coffee. Now, when I order a black Americano, an Americano is made from an espresso. And if you're going to serve someone instant coffee, I don't expect to be charged £4 for something that the whole can possibly cost you £4. So that has happened in a few places. It happened in a few places in Wales. And so I tried to remember to ask, do you serve decaffeinated coffee? And some people will be quite honest and go, it comes out of a jar. I won't have it then, thanks. Because I don't like it. I don't like the taste of it. It's got a weird smell to it. And the other one that I've had to sort of nudge myself to remember is don't microwave the scones. Why do they do that? Because they go from being what is meant to be a little bit crispy on the outside with a nice texture on the inside to being piping hot and floppy. Why? Yeah. Who likes a scone like that? But people keep going back, don't they? They go back to these cafes. And I think about cafe culture and how much I enjoy drinking coffee made by someone else. And is it because I enjoy having the drink made for me? Or do I really enjoy that particular brand of coffee? And sometimes, yeah, I do. Because there's a few places I've been to and the coffee has been dreadful. I do quite like Marks and Spencer's House Blend. And they serve that in the cafe. And it is actually quite a smooth coffee if you're a coffee drinker, if you like an Americano. And I think if you're drinking black Americanos with no sugar, then you do tend to notice the flavour and the smell. And I'm not being a coffee snob. I just go, no. It's like sometimes if the water's got too much fluoride in it or chlorine, you can smell it. It sort of tampers with the taste of the black coffee. A little bit like what it does with tea. And you can get tea bags, can't you, for hard water. So I don't know what adjustments you would make for coffee in a hard water area. Something to think about. Anyway, I'm looking at the leaves and moving a little bit more than they were before. The birches are still dancing. So the energy out there is interesting, and it feels like potentially with that breeze it might cool down a little bit. Now, if you've got any thoughts and you want to share your opinions about coffee or how scones should be served up, or even about misrepresentation, do comment, or you can contact me. I'm on TikTok, the Cauldron of Curiosities. See if you can find me there.